If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you. Hello Internet, I'm glad to welcome you back to the show as well as RSM Teitge. Last week we were speaking about Teddy the lion, which is a pet lion, I suppose we can call it at Fort Doppies. Very famous lion. He was telling us a few stories about it. Now I have to ask you, RSM, I do understand that at certain times politicians and such people would arrive here at Fort Doppies for what they call a bosberaad. That's like a secretive meeting, away from people, but to be honest, sometimes these meetings were just a way to cheat on your wife. I'm not saying that's what happened there, but certainly some people had no honor during such bosberaads. I wonder if you can tell us, I know that Teddy was involved with a few of these meetings.
Yeah, the last part that I mentioned was that is that Teddy at the base did not have any boundaries. He was not locked up in a cage or in fence area. He had free of will to move out of the base, go to the bush, into the veld, and then he comes back from time to time. And the more he went to the bush, the longer the period became that he came back and then visited the base area. So at the time when the cabinet was there for this meeting, the lion was out, and they knew about the lion, and they would like to see the lion because they've heard so many stories about the lion. And at the time when they were there for approximately 3 days. And the lion was out in the veld, in the bush, and he didn't come back. So the last night, we had a big get together in the bar. John Foster was there, and a few well-known ministers were there, which Louis Legrandsie was one of them. And also there were a few from the opposition party as well there, like Horse Roll was there. And they had a big gathering in the bar, and they were drinking and playing darts and pool, and it was a loud noise, and they enjoyed themselves. But the lion was not there, and they were very disappointed in that. So what happened is later that evening, Minister Louis Legrandsie decided now he's going to withdraw from this party, if you will, and go back to his quarters where he slept. And our quarters there didn't have doors. It was just an opening. So there were no doors there. So he went to his sleeping place away from the bar, quite a distance from the bar. And he went alone into this room. And while he was busy undressing, the lion came in. Nobody heard it. Normally, he growls quite a distance away. But with this noise in the bar, nobody heard that the lion is coming. And also the generator was working some distance away, and that also makes a noise. So the lion always growls when he comes close to the base. But that specific evening and that time when Minister Louis Legrandsie was in the room, the lion came straight to his room. I don't know why, but he came into the room. And when Louis Legrandsie saw this lion coming in, he got such a fright that he jumped into his locker cupboard and closed the door. And the lion thought, no, this is a little game. So he jumped onto this cupboard and he turned it over, and he wants to play with this. But Louis Legrandsie screamed that someone can hear him. But with a noise there in the bar, nobody hears him. So he got such a big fright about this lion coming into the room. So at that stage, a little bit later, I don't know how long, there was a major, we call him Timmerman. He left the bar to go to the loo, because the loo was about 30 meters away from the bar. He went to the loo, and when he got there, he's away from the noise, and he heard this commotion in this barracks, in this room. So he went there to see what is going on, and he saw the lion, and he knew the lion. So he went back to the bar, and he told everybody the lion is there in that barracks. So everybody went to this room, and all the ministers and stuff, and they were so glad to see the lion. But they forget about the minister, Louis Legrandsie, because the cupboard is lying on the door side, and he couldn't get out. So they forget about him. And they went back to the bar, and everybody was glad to see the lion. And then later, Timmerman thought, no, the minister is still in the cupboard, making a big noise and stuff. So he went there, and they picked up the cupboard, and Minister Louis Legrandsie came out. But it was quite a funny situation at that stage.
I can just imagine being trapped by a lion inside your cupboard. It must have. Yeah, okay. No, that's excellent. I must tell you, all of you people here, that the RSM has actually given me all his qualifications. It's 2 pages long. There's really 53 of them. It's impossible for me to repeat them here. It's fantastic. I must tell you, sir, you had a fantastic career. But I suppose once a man is trained like that, you do want to go in operations. You do want to test what you've now trained and so hard for. So I wonder if you can tell us, just give us a overview of where you went and what you did, perhaps.
Okay, my first experience, operational experience, is when I finished, me and my mates, with our minor tactics course. When you finish minor tactics course, then you qualify as a special forces operator. But those days, you had to do an operation to finally qualify. Actually, if you may call it that. So we left Mapacha. We got into an aircraft, and it was a C-160. And we left, and we thought we're going to Durban. We're going back. We're going to paint Durban pink, because we've been in the bush and training for such a long time. So we as mates, we spoke about it. We're going to take over Durban, and there was a few places that we used to go, as Father's Moustache and Pussycat. It's nightclubs that was in Durban. So we thought we're going to jaw, and because it was a whole year of hard training, and we need a break. So we got into the aircraft at Mapacha, because Mapacha is about 118 kilometers from Fort Dorpies, where we did our last course, which we called minor tactics. And in the aircraft, while we're going there were boxes in the middle of this aircraft. And while taking off, they opened these boxes, and they dealt out Rhodesian camouflage uniforms. And then we knew, okay, we're not going to Durban. We're not going to paint Durban pink. So they dished out these uniforms, Rhodesia, and we flew to Rhodesia to help there with operations. So when we got to Salisbury, we landed in Salisbury, and then we got issued with more kit, and we got into a DC-4 Sky, which you call the Skymaster. And we took off there, and we went to Mabolahuta. It's another, first Recce, a place called Recce in Rhodesia. And then from there, with the Dakota, we flew to Mabolahuta, where we started with operations in Rhodesia. And that was my first experience in the operational area in Rhodesia, where we did various of operations in the Gaza province. They call it the Gaza province. If you must look at the map, it's the very north part of the Kruger National Park. So we did our first operations there. We did various of ambushes and demolishing tasks and attacks on bases, and we were very successful. We lost a few of our mates there. Sadly to mention that, only two, but we were very successful, and intercepts came through from the enemy where they mentioned that here's a new enemy that they don't know because they are very aggressive, and we are too much for them, so they withdrew out of Gaza province. So I saw that the Rhodesian force couldn't believe that in such a short time that we dominated the whole Gaza province. And they actually sent the aircraft to do reconnaissance and take photos, aerial photographs, to see actually what we did. And they couldn't believe that in such a short time that we really dominated the whole Gaza province and pushed out the enemy completely out of it. There was a time that there were no more operations that we can do. So we went back to Salisbury, and then we did some operations with the SAS, this Special Air Service of Rhodesia, in other parts of the country. So that was my first operational experience.
Yeah, that's when you became known, I think, as D Squadron Rhodesian SAS.
Correct.
Does that mean you, people of your age who served there, are you entitled to wear St. Collared beret?
Just repeat that, Chris.
Would you be entitled to have a Rhodesian SAS beret? I think it's St. Collared. It's very famous in the SAS. Would you be entitled to wear such a beret?
No, I can't recall that we ever got their insignia, issued to us, or the beret or whatever. We never received that. So we were called D Squadron of the SAS, and it was noted like that in their archives and stuff. But I never wore any insignia of the SAS Rhodesian force. Never.
So the uniform, the Rhodesian uniform was only for inside the country, just to melt in with the rest of the Rhodesian forces, to not betray South African presence.
Yeah, we never moved around in the townships and in their military bases. They immediately took us to the operational area in the bush. So we worked with them, with the SAS in the bush, but nobody at that stage wore any insignia. It's just a camouflage dress with your weapons, and we used R1s at that time, and not AK-47s, and we had to look like Rhodesian soldiers. But never were we issued with any insignia or berets or stuff like that, just the uniform.
Okay, thank you, I've got that. But when you were deployed actually in Mozambique, you would not be wearing this uniform.
The Rhodesian uniform you're talking about?
Yes, you would be wearing some other Cuban type of uniform with AK-47s. Or were you still wearing the Rhodesian?
Yeah, but not when we worked with in Rhodesia with the Rhodesians SAS and the Zulu Scouts. We never wore any other dress except the Rhodesian camouflage dress.
Okay, but that was inside Rhodesia. But what would happen if you're in, say, Mozambique, on these patrols where you were alone without the SAS or Salute scouts being present?
No, we use the Rhodesian uniform. We never use other uniforms. In other operations we did without the Rhodesian force. In other words, we did not work with the Rhodesian force. We worked from South Africa. Then we wore other enemy dress and AK-47s, yes, but not when we worked with the SAS and Rhodesia, because we had to be seen as Rhodesians, not South Africans. It was highly secret that nobody knows that we're from South Africa.
Yes, that's true. And this was, I think, from 1978 to about 1980.
Yes, you're right. You're correct.
Would it be one long deployment,
Now,
or would you go back?
Now we stayed at Mabalahuta. It's a play. They call it in plain language the place of the ants. They were red ants. You can't believe it. It's incredible. And they were a nuisance, these red ants. And it was really a pest. So Mabalahuta was called the place of the red ants. So what we did is we stayed in this base, Mabalahuta, and we did all the operations from this base, from this Mabalahuta base. We did not go in and out from Salisbury or the other towns inside Rhodesia. We stayed at Mabalahuta and we did all our operations from Mabalahuta.
Okay, how would such an operation go? Would it start with a parachute drop, or would you be deployed by vehicle or helicopter?
No, we did everything by foot. The Rhodesians didn't have a lot of helicopters available to deploy us. So what they did is we traveled by vehicle. They call it a crocodile. It's a kind of it's a Bedford vehicle which was camouflaged. You know, it was an improvised vehicle from the Rhodesian force. They call it a crocodile, and we traveled with those vehicles to the border. Now, if you can recall, there was a minefield. I think at one stage it was the biggest minefield in the world, if I'm not mistaken. It's the minefield between Rhodesia and Mozambique. So we went up to this minefield, to the fence with these vehicles, and then we got off and we moved further by foot. And then with us were the engineers from the Rhodesian force that took us through this minefield, because they've got the codes of all the mines, and they knew where we must cross and how to cross. So they guided us through the minefield to the other side. And then from there, we walk up to the targets where we have to do our attacks or sabotage tasks or whatever the case may be. And then we walk back after those operations up to the minefield. We send a message on radio to tell us we are back at that spot, and then the engineers will come again with the vehicles and cross the minefield, get us at the other side, and we walk through the minefield on the vehicles and then back to Mabalahuta at the military base.
May I
We
ask
never
what,
traveled with their helicopters because they didn't have enough helicopters to deploy us.
I see. May I ask what goes through your mind when you walk through a landmine field? Because these were really big. I thought they could be seen from space or something. There was some rumor about them.
Yeah, let me say this. I made sure that I'm not in front. I was at the back. So if there's anyone to step on a mine, it will be one of my mates that's in front of me. So I'm safe. So no, but the engineers knew what they were doing. There were signs and marks throughout the minefield, which only the engineers of the Rhodesian force knew. The enemy never knew those, the code. There's a specific code. And on this minefield, there's sectors that's got different codes. So the pattern, how the minefields was slain was different. Each block is different. So that the enemy doesn't maybe later find out what the pattern of these mines is. So each block is different, and these engineers from the Rhodesian army, they knew exactly, because they knew what the codes were, and they had to take us through. And it's quite interesting. Some of there were what do you call it, claymores that was on poles high up, and there were thin tripwires over a wide area. So if you trip that wire, then the claymore will go off, which is not far from that path. So the engineers went and they marked these tripwires. So if you go there, you have to make sure that because it's marked, so you have to step clear and over this tripwire. That was quite scary. I mean, you cross a tripwire. If you're going to make a mistake, you're going to set off that claymore, which is not far away from you. So that was quite scary. You have to make sure that you do not step on that tripwire. And if you go through it, and that minefield was quite wide. I can remember they said it's the longest and the biggest minefield in the world. But the width of that minefield was approximately 400 meters or more. So it was quite wide. So you have to travel quite a distance to go through this minefield. And as you travel through the minefield, you see elephants and some other game in the minefield that stepped off these mines. And they're lying there rotten, and skeletons of animals that try to go through the minefield and set off these mines. So that is quite scary for a person to go through such a minefield.
I can just imagine. But do you think it was effective military-wise? Did it keep the terrorists out?
Oh, you mean the minefield itself?
Yes. Did the minefield actually stop the terrorists?
Oh yes, for sure. Oh yes. I mean, for us to go through, and we knew that the engineers will help us through it. I mean, and you see the dead animals and elephants whose legs and were blown off and stuff like that. That's scary. So imagine the enemy see that. They will not cross it. I mean, I will not cross it if I don't know the code to go through. There's ways and means to cross it. Yes, there is. But I think it was definitely a barrier for the enemy to cross that. And I think they didn't cross it easily. For sure they didn't. But it did happen, yes.
How did you find the Rhodesian soldiers, these engineering people?
I don't know the engineers as such, because we only saw them taking us through and guide us through the minefield. The rest of the engineers, I don't know that much. But we must not be mistaken. The Rhodesian force was quite a good force, quite a good, disciplined, and effective force. So I believe that the engineers are well trained, and they are just as good as our engineers in South Africa. We worked with the SAS and Zulu Scouts in Rhodesia, and I don't want to elaborate a lot on this, but I feel that we had an edge above the Rhodesian soldiers, the SAS. I think we were better trained and we were better fighting soldiers. But I don't want to say too much about this.
I have to ask you, were these working in Rhodesia, Would it be the same every time? I mean, you were sort of caught unawares now when you came from minor tactics and you just bundled off to Rhodesia, but surely at some stage you came back. Would you then be informed you're going back to Rhodesia, or would you again only find out when you're on the aircraft flying north?
No, later on. No, later on we knew where we were going, so it wasn't a surprise. It's just the first trip that we went to Rhodesia that was quite a surprise to us.
Well, I know you went on the Lobito raid as well, but we spoke about that in one of the other recordings. So I wonder what else happened. Can you tell us? I know you went at some stage to Israel for training in counterterrorism because it was felt that you should have this capability in the unit. Is it possible to tell us something about that?
In 1980, I don't know who it actually was, but it must have been a very clever general or someone that knew that in 10 years' time, uh, we're going to need a capability to do some urban warfare. So in I think it was 1981, if I'm not mistaken, me and three of my mates, plus two task force members from the police task force, we went to Israel to do this urban warfare course. Now, you must remember, uh, before this, we didn't have any capabilities or know-hows or whatever to do urban warfare. We only concentrated on bush warfare and guerrilla warfare and stuff like that. So someone knew that in 10 years' time, we're going to need urban capability, where we're going to encounter operations where we have to fight in build-up areas. So they thought it good to send us to Israel to go and do the course. So we went to, it's a place just outside Tel Aviv. It's about 50 km out of Tel Aviv. There's a place which they call Special Border Police. The Special Border Police was initiated after that incident of the 11 athletes that got killed in Germany with the Olympics, and Israel didn't have a unit to handle these situations, so they started this unit, and they called it the Special Border Police. So we went there, and we did the whole training on urban warfare, and specifically special operations in urban warfare, like hostage release and stuff like that. Yeah, hostage release in buildings, hostage release in planes, buses. So we went there to do this specialized training in this urban warfare. If you can recall, in the SANDF, we had they call it urban coin or something like that. Plattelandse coin operaties. And this is not the same. So we did this course. It was a very, very good course, and we did very well in that, because the physical training, there's a few records that we broke from the Israeli force, which I think two of the records we broke completely. And it is mentioned, there's a board up there in their hall where all the records are kept. And we are very honored to say that two of our South African names will appear on that board on two of the records that we broke there. So that's their physical exercises records that we broke. But what a course! It was amazing, and we went there, and we were issued their weapons, their uniforms, and we did the course in their capacity as an Israeli soldier. So it was quite interesting in a very, very nice course. And then we went back to South Africa and we initiated this course. We started to write manuals and drills and stuff. And we presented the first course in 1981, the first urban warfare course.
Now, that would not be hostage rescue, say in Pretoria or Johannesburg or something like that, because the police special task force can deal with it. So, what exactly were you doing?
Well, if you look at you see, there were two special task force members that went with us that also did the course. So we were 6 South Africans. Four of them of this team was our special forces. Now, if you look at the scenario in South Africa, let's say there's a hostage incident somewhere in South Africa. The task force will do that. They will go and sort out that hostage release or whatever the case may be, because it's inside the borders of South Africa. As soon as it is in the outside of the borders of South Africa in a foreign country, for example, a embassy somewhere in Africa, this unstable, any unstable country, then special forces will do that and not the task force.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So if a South African aircraft is hijacked and it lands, I'm going to use Entebbe now because we know what happened at Entebbe, then theoretically it will be the reconnaissance commandos who will go in.
Correct, for sure. I just want to mention to you that all the unstable countries in Africa, we've got all the plans of the embassies, for instance, ready. So if we have to do a hostage release situation somewhere in Africa, we knew exactly what the embassy's buildings look like, so we can start rehearsing on that. So we had all the know-how and information of all the embassies in Africa.
Okay, so you don't have to go in blind. You know exactly what room is where, what it looks like, what's inside it.
Correct, but any urban warfare situation or hostage release situation is very dangerous. I mean, it's not like in the bush where we were very comfortable and we were fullies in the bush. I don't think there's any force in the world that can do bush warfare like we did. So we were very good in that. But an urban situation like a hostage release or something, it's much more dangerous. There's no bush to hide. So you go into a room and the first guy to enter, he can take the punch. So it's very dangerous to do a hostage release or any other task like that. It's very dangerous and it's very sensitive and not easy. It's not an easy task.
Well, you will meet the enemy, that's for sure. And once you go in, you have to eliminate him, because if you don't, he might set off a bomb or he might start killing hostages. There is no way back.
Correct.
Once you go in.
No.
May I ask, who would be in charge of such an operation? Who's going to make the decision to go in or
not? There's many different ways. I mean, a team leader that's appointed to go and do this task, he's in charge. But when we do a task like that, in the ops room in Pretoria, let's say we go and do a hostage release task somewhere in Africa. The ops room at Special Forces headquarters will monitor the whole operation, and they can give inputs to change certain aspects of that operation. But the team leader that's in charge, and it can be A colonel, it can be a major, it can be a lower rank that will be in charge to do such a hostage release operation. And so it can be any person.
Okay, without giving any secrets away, can we talk about the weapons being used during such a special operation to release hostages somewhere?
Yeah, normally the weapons that we use for hostage release or such tasks, we use low velocity weapons like the MP5, which is a 9mm weapon, or your pistol, which is also a 9mm weapon. We don't use high velocity weapons like AK-47 or our SANDF weapons like 223, which is high velocity weapons. We don't use that. We use 9mm. We started off with an old Uzi weapon, which the Israelis used, and that's also the weapon we used when we did the training in Israel. But later, I mean, we use more modern weapons than the Uzi, and we use the MP5. The MP5 is also 9mm and a very good weapon to use in hostage release situations. If you must do, let's say, a hostage release in an aircraft, and the velocity, a high velocity weapon will go through the body of the enemy and penetrate other hostages at the back. So we don't want that. So we use specialized ammunition and weapons so that if you hit the let's call it the terrorist or the enemy, that the bullet doesn't go right through and injure other bystanders or civilians, or damage actually, and also damage the aircraft maybe in that event. So we must use low velocity weapons and specific ammunition so that the bullet doesn't go through and hit any other hostages or damage the back of an aircraft or something like that.
Okay, may I ask you, should someone listening here find himself in such a situation and the special forces people are coming in, what's your advice to him? That he just don't bother you, don't move or anything like that?
You're talking about the hostage?
Yes, I'm talking about the hostage. Let's say someone is listening here and a few years from now, I don't wish it upon you, but let's say you're taken hostage and now the special forces guys have arrived. You wouldn't know about it. But let's say all hell breaks loose. What should you not do?
Well, I think the best thing you must do is just go lie flat on the ground and not try to run away or whatever. Because if you go back to the raid on Teitge, which was called Operation Thunderbolt, I think 2 or 3 Israelis were hit by one of the soldiers because they didn't know which was a terrorist and who not. So I think the very first thing that any hostage person must do is just to lie flat on the ground and stay out of, don't run and don't panic. That's the only thing I can do. But you must remember that you don't get that message through to the hostages beforehand. They will not know it. So you don't know how the hostage is going to act. So you can start to jump up and scream and run, which is quite dangerous. I mean, specifically for the team that's going to do the clearing and the hostage release. It's very difficult for the soldiers to extinguish, especially in the dark, because remember, you would like to do a hostage release rather in the dark than in the day, because we've got equipment that can see in the dark, and the enemy doesn't have that, or the terrorist doesn't have that. So it's better to do it in the dark. And And night vision equipment doesn't clearly distinguish between a hostage or a terrorist, and it is very difficult. And if you go and have a look at the Entebbe raid or Operation Thunderbolt, where the Israelis went into Uganda and released those hostages, there were some of the hostages that screamed, and they were, they didn't know what to do. And in that instance, it happened that some of the hostages got hit. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, that's very true. I know that one of those hostages was a French Jew and he couldn't speak Hebrew very well. And they were coming in and they were shouting to lie down, to stay down. And this guy sadly did not quite understand what they were saying. And so he stood up and they shot him. It's a sad thing. It can happen. That's why I'm glad you're telling us here that should you ever be in such a situation, just lie down and don't try to intervene. Just let the special forces guys do their job.
Yeah. No, but you can also think that in a situation like that, if I must refer back to that Entebbe raid, those hostages were there for a couple of days, and I mean, you can think of any hostage member, they scared, and they really, after a few days, and it was very hot, and they didn't have air conditioning, and a hostage can do any funny thing, and he can accidentally be hit by the force that's going to enter the building and do the hostage release. So it can happen. It can really happen.
Well, he can be. And of course, he can also turn. I think the FBI hostage statistics will tell you if you can keep a guy for more than 3 days as a hostage, there's a very real chance that he then becomes sympathetic towards the hostage takers. And so I can imagine that you don't know if he's the enemy or not. So I'm thinking of Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped and then she turned and she started robbing banks. And it's an interesting thing because I read the files on her. She was subjected to rock music, a lot of rock music. That's what they used to turn her.
Yeah. But if you go and have a look at all the hostage release situations all over the world, there was that big one in Russia as well.
The Moscow State Theater.
Yeah, there's always hostages that gets hit or will die. I think the Russians made a big mistake there by using that gas, because that killed a few hostages. I don't think the force that did the hostage release knew that this gas was so effective or too much dangerous that killed some of the hostages. So we were also been trained to use gas. You can use gas through the aircon system. You can throw grenades. You can use canisters. You can use a lot of means. There's a lot of means to use gas to make the terrorists or the enemy asleep or put them out. But it's got the same um, outcome to the hostages. So you must be very careful when you use gas, because I think the Russians, they made a big mistake with that gas, with that hostage release they did in that theater in Russia.
Yes, quite a few died. I think more than 100. I'm not sure, but a lot of people died, innocents, when they inhaled this gas. You're quite right. So your first objective when you rescue someone is actually that, to have as few casualties as possible.
Yes, that's definitely the main thing of a hostage release situation. to minimize, obviously, to minimize casualties on the hostage side, and kill all the enemy as best as you can. Because if you don't kill the enemy, let's say you wound this person, this terrorist or whatever, he can still pull a trigger, or he can set off a bomb. So you must make sure that you kill the enemy, and you don't fire one shot. You shoot two or more. And we are trained to go for the head straight, so that you make sure that you eliminate that person as quick as possible. He doesn't move further, and he cannot act to throw a grenade or shoot back or put off a bomb. So you must make sure that you eliminate that terrorist or enemy to the best you can and as quick as possible.
So the idea is not to arrest him. The idea is to eliminate him as quickly as possible.
It is possible that you can arrest him. Let's say they give up. I mean, they wave a white flag and say they're gonna stop this. Then it's fine. Then you arrest him. But if they don't, and if he's got a weapon in his hand, and you know there's maybe a bomb that they're gonna put off, then you go for the kill. You take him out for sure. You cannot let them live, because they will kill hostages, they will shoot back, they will throw grenades, and they will put off a bomb that is maybe in the vicinity.
May I ask you, as a South African, can we have faith in our special forces to be able to conduct such missions today?
I can say with let's say a very positive attitude that our special forces at this stage is still the best of the SNDF. I mean, the training is still the same. The selections are still the same. Everything is still the same. So if that member passes his cycle, he's a worthy special forces member. If I must go back to that incident in Bangui, in Kar, Central African Republic, and you look at the youngsters, how they performed there, then you will be proud and you will be positive of how the members of special forces is still today. I mean, I know it's a few years ago, I think it's about seven years ago, the Bangui conflict, but there's no difference. The members are still trained the same. The selections are still the same. So I think, with any doubt in my mind, I think they are still a very good force, and they are just as good as all the previous operators in the past.
Well, you did say to me that part of their course or their cycle is actually the advanced counterterrorism training, every one of it.
Yeah, I just want to mention to you that it is now brought into the cycle, the urban warfare course, and that is the basic urban warfare course. And then after he qualified as a special forces operator, then he must do the advanced urban warfare course. So the urban warfare course that he does in his cycle, there's not much time to give the full course at that stage. So they do a basic urban warfare course, and then later they do an advanced urban warfare course.
Well, I'm proud to hear about that. That's my feeling too, that if something should happen like that, God forbid, I think the special forces will be able to do what needs to be done if they can get there.
Oh yes, for sure.
Well, thank you for this time again. RSM, I must tell you that we're really learning a lot from you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being willing to speak to us and to share your knowledge. We're really grateful to you. And we will probably have another episode. But for now, we wish you well. Thank you.